Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking edition of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Secrets of Fail series, where we are talking to CEOs and entrepreneurs all about their epic business blunders and everything they learned from making huge failures. So with us in the hot seat today is none other than Michael Katz. He is the CEO of mParticle. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Yeah, good, man. Good. So let's get into the elevator pitch, brother. What are you guys up to there at mParticle?
Yeah, mParticle is a customer data platform. We've been around for about 10 years or so. Ultimately, we work with large multi-channel consumer brands that want to create better, more personalized, adaptive experiences for their customers across a variety of screens and devices. And that really starts with getting the right data in place, unifying it, cleansing it, making sure that it's easily transferable to the downstream systems that they use to ultimately run and grow their businesses.
Right, no worries. So it's mainly enterprise clients that are you guys are servicing with your technology?
Yeah, for now.
Uh-huh. And what about industries and things like that? Are you focused on any particular industry, or kind of any industry?
Well, there are certain industries that I think lend themselves better to some of our strengths. Um, I mentioned the fact that we're focused on multi-channel consumer brands. So usually it's companies where like the mobile experience, more specifically like the mobile app experience, is at like the center of that customer experience. So that naturally lends itself well to financial services, to media and entertainment, to certain travel companies, to QSR brands. Like we pretty much work with all the big QSR companies like Starbucks and McDonald's and a whole bunch of others. So anytime like mobility and mobile is at the center of the customer experience, we tend to do well.
Sweet. Awesome, brother. Well, look, let's get into the meat and the potatoes of this series. What is your epic story of fail for our audience around the world today?
Oh man, I got many. But I'll focus on like one very distinct period of time. So we started the company in 2013. We got like the V1 of our platform into market at the beginning of 2015, and we had a bit of a rocket ship takeoff from that point. So 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, just all massive growth. And we were predicting 2019 would be very much of the same. Like we didn't see an end to that growth trajectory in sight. And we got to like the middle of the year and we were on pace to hit maybe like 60% of our target. And we'll hopefully get into what we did to course correct, but basically we just hit a bunch of growing pains. The things that we were doing that got us to that point stopped working at that point, and we needed to go through a bit of an evolution.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny how that happens, eh? And
Yeah,
it's like it's a frightening thing, right? Because if you don't fix it, you tend to basically companies tend to shrink as opposed to grow, and that's no good for you or valuation, or if you're raising capital, whatever. It's like it's always a bad thing. Why have you
yeah.
stopped growing? I don't know, and it becomes like a real pain point. So, what actually, like, how did you course correct, and what were the issues that you guys, solved?
Yeah. So one quick point that I would make is just that like usually when companies find themselves in this position, it's not because they started doing things wrong or improperly. It's that the things that were working for them, they kept doing them for too long.
Mm.
So like tactics, fatigue, strategies need to evolve. The market is always changing. Competitive forces are dynamic, right? So like strategy can never be static. You always have to be evolving. How did we navigate the challenges? Um, to be honest, like when I realized like I had to dive in pretty deep and figure out like what was going on, like I had no clue where I was going to start. I needed to start by starting and just start looking at a bunch of different data and seeing if there's any trends or patterns I could identify. I started to look at the data and I realized like the data was crap.
Hmm.
So like the business was not instrumented properly. We were not capturing the necessary signal for us to be able to make informed, repeatable, scalable decisions. So first thing first, we had to scrub all the kind of historical data over the past couple of years and work with the different teams to fill in what we believed would be like the necessary data points that we would hopefully uncover some sort of like profound insight. The problem was like we didn't know if that was going to happen or not. Like we just kind of had to take that leap of faith. Turns out, as we started, as we scrubbed all the data and got like the right data in, and we started analyzing it, we started to kind of tear apart the numbers that were previously showing up as like averages and aggregates, and we started to de-aggregate them. One of my big beliefs is that when looking at averages and aggregates, like that's where risk goes to hide. You need to tease the data apart. And what we saw was very pronounced strengths and weaknesses in different parts of the market. And then we started to unpack that even further to say, why are we winning in these areas? Why are we losing in these certain areas? And then we started focusing on where we were losing because we wanted to increase our conversion rate. So what we did, we started doing a bunch of customer interviews and talking to the salespeople and looking at like, well, what was the nature of these conversations? What were they asking for? And it ended up that like we had fallen behind on 2 product features that were on our roadmap, but we started to defer them a bit longer than we probably should have. And we were just getting crushed by the competition because we couldn't check the box on these 2 features. So what we did was we released alpha versions of these 2 capabilities basically as fast as possible. Like first version of each of these things out within like a month or so. Not to have necessarily on par functionality, but just to be able to check the box, to mitigate that risk, because a lot of the times in enterprise software, the way that it's bought, like they go feature by feature. If you have it, you get a check. If you don't have it, you get an X, and you need more checks at the end of the day. And they don't necessarily take into account like the quality of the checks, right? So it's like, if you can check the box, you're good. We did that. Conversion rates improved by like 30%. And we were able to reaccelerate growth over the course of the next couple of years, especially heading into the pandemic. And it culminated with us raising our Series E in 2021.
That's crazy, dude. It's crazy. So when you think about that whole experience, Mike, what did you learn from that? Like, what do you now take forward with you into your business today?
Yeah, I would say it's one of the most valuable lessons that I've ever learned in business. Like my first company, Interclick, we had an incredible ride. Like we started without much industry experience. We ended up taking it public. Yahoo bought it a couple years later. We never had a bad quarter. And the nice thing about that is like, well, we never had a bad quarter. The bad thing is like, you don't really learn a ton when everything's going right. You learn like when you have to kind of sort through the muck. My takeaway from this situation, which is completely transformed the way that I think about business, is that businesses are systems, right? Not like technical systems, like systems in the kind of truest sense. If you want the right output, you have to focus on ensuring that there's quality inputs. The business wasn't instrumented. What that meant was that the reasons, like one, we weren't capturing any of the reasons why we were winning deals. And then the reasons why we were losing deals were like, they were probably more like excuses than they were reasons, like anything that we could actually learn from. Because when you have a sales organization, yes, it is like this, it's a means for distribution and revenue creation, but they're also, what is the market feeling? What is it responding? And they have to be able to get that information and log it into Salesforce or whatever CRM tool a company uses. And so really evolving my thinking to try to create much more deterministic outcomes through the alignment of information, how it gets collected and analyzed and disseminated to the incentive structures in place, because oftentimes incentives drive behaviors, and then making sure that everybody has enough context as to like what we're trying to solve for, and then like that the communication flows throughout the org, because inside a complex organization where you have multiple functions, from sales to sales engineering to product marketing and corporate marketing and your whole post sales team, like each one of these functions is its own kind of like subsystem, and the quality of interactions between the different functions, like if communication is good, it's timely, it's relevant, both sides understand what's going on, like packets are sent, packets are received, that whole thing, things will work, and they will just kind of work as they should. But if something's off, if something's misaligned, you will see equally powerful compounding results to the downside, and that's ultimately what was happening to us.
It's so funny because I talk about systems. I work with a network of CEOs, and we basically design these influence systems around the CEO so they can build better businesses, leadership, all this kind of stuff. And I talk about this idea of like, if you do, let's just for argument's sake, say you're doing $1 million a year and you want to get to 2, you don't just get there. It'd be nice, right? We all have massive businesses.
Yeah.
But we don't fucking get there, because we don't rise to the level of our goals. We always fall to the level of our systems. And that's exactly what you said. So I'm so glad you said that, because I'm a great believer in that, because I think we approach business oftentimes in a very haphazard way, where it's not systemically approached. It's kind of like, well, let's do this. They're activity based rather than systems based. And I always find like when you get into that train of activity, you don't scale as fast, blah, blah, blah. The business isn't basically efficient. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I think like the best executives that I've either worked with directly or observed at a distance, like they're all systems thinkers. Like they get how the things across the organization tie together, and understand the difference between what are like the actual problems, like what's like the real thread that we can pull on to untangle whatever kind of like Gordian knot that you're trying to untangle, versus treating all the symptoms that they see. So yeah, I very much on the same page.
Perfect. So Michael, if you could get into the Matt Brown Show time machine now with the luxury of hindsight, and kind of go back to yourself when you were looking at the numbers not doing what they were supposed to be doing, or not meeting your expectations, what would you do differently and why?
Yeah, great question. So I think we had a lot of the right pieces in place. Like we had a great revenue ops leader. We had a great sales enablement person. We had able-bodied salespeople and salesmen. So like we had the pieces in place. They just weren't connecting. They were all kind of off doing their own thing. So like if I could go back in time, or if I was ever kind of crazy enough to start another company, I would make sure that our information system is really well thought out from basically inception. Because like when you think about companies, there is a stack of systems, and I like my mental model is like the most foundational system that a company has is their values system, right? Because that's like the default operating instructions, getting people to do the things you want them to do, or to act a certain way, certainly in times of like ambiguity or uncertainty. And so that is kind of like ground zero. But right on top of that, you have like your information system. Everything flows from that. Like you can't make good decisions. You definitely can't make good decisions at scale without a really strong information system. So like in the early days of any startup, like obviously you want to like hit the ground running, you want to have like success in market. But if you're not thinking about like, what are the data points that I need to collect to make informed decisions over time, you're kind of building the house on an unstable foundation.
Mm. So true. Hey, so true. Cool, bad. So look, Mike, what is your advice for other CEOs or entrepreneurs out there right now watching us, listening to us, wherever they are in the world, about the importance of failing or failure in becoming successful in business?
Yeah, I would go back to what I said before. It's really tough to learn and to grow when everything is going well. Um, for me, I think for most people that I've talked to that have seen and experienced growing pains along the way. And if you're familiar with the book like The Messy Middle, this is all about that. Um, Embrace it. Like don't shy away from it. Part of it is like you have to experience the whole experience, which means like the ups and downs. And part of it is like don't get too up when things are going well. Don't get too down when they're not. Try to remain pretty even keeled and maintain a sense of equanimity. And in doing so, just be appreciative of the fact that like are things as easy as you probably want them to be? No. But the goal isn't for things to be easy. It's to be so good at what you do, you make them easy.
Yeah, it's there's a saying I love, which is nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems.
That's right.
You know, because if you think about that, it's like, hang on, are you really that great? Not really. Is it really that bad? Not that bad. You know what I'm
Not that
saying?
bad.
And I think it's a mantra that I use when I'm either feeling like I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid, or or whether I'm feeling like I'm a total failure. Because it's just like it's one thing. There's many things you can use, but I find like that one statement, just like I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, okay, just that little bit of a shift from like I'm gonna slit my wrist tonight, or
Yeah.
I'm not, and it's kind of like it's an important thing to use, I believe. Like you got these little quotes, mantras, because I think like
I
you know
agree.
quotes and things like this, like they're kind of like, it's like, oh, I've heard that before, but like why do they exist then? Why do people share them? It's because they mean something and they help.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would say like it is also important to like not to like reject whatever feeling you're feeling, but just to like take stock of it and to sit with it for a bit, not to just like kind of like press fast forward and skip to like the whole kind of like rationalization, compartmentalization part of it. Like
Mm.
I don't think that that's necessarily healthy. I think it's like it is good to feel and don't be bad, like don't feel bad about feeling, um but process it, right?
Mm.
Like make sense of it, because that's really like that's the path forward.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree with you more, dude. A reflection's another thing, right? It's like, well, that's how you become a better human, I think, at the end of the day. Let's see. So let's talk about quickly, Mike. Let's wrap this up. Books, tools, and resources that you recommend. You mentioned a book earlier. What books, and things like that do you recommend?
I read a lot, because I think it's important for anybody that wants to get ahead in their career to continue to improve their context. And you're not going to improve your context if like every free minute you have you're scrolling through Instagram or you're watching like reality TV, right? Um, yeah, I do believe that. Yeah, I believe in kind of the statement where it's like you are the product of like the five people that you spend the most time with. And what reading a lot does is like it gives you totally different perspectives. It allows you to kind of break out of your echo chamber. I'm reading a book right now called The Crux, which is how leaders become strategists, which I think is pretty interesting. When I read, it's typically about business strategy, or better understanding the psychology of human beings.
Mm. Yeah, I'm the same. I'm big on that. I'm big on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Until we replace all of us with robots, like we
Yeah.
have to work with people, and I think at scale, all business problems end up becoming just like people
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah. It's really interesting. There's Alan Morris is on this series not too long ago. He wrote a book called All In, like how to risk everything for everything. You know what I mean? And he's got this new academy now called All In Leadership or whatever. It's a very fascinating book that I would recommend. If when you have the time, because it's in the psychology of success. Like the inner game, which is a book I wrote about, which is all about like the shit that you have to deal with inside before you can build anything of value outside. But I think he's done a really amazing job. I don't usually read too much; it puts me straight to sleep. But that book, I'm like page turning, so it's a real refreshing page turner.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah, man. Mike, you're a total legend, brother. I love your perspective. Thanks for being courageous and being vulnerable on the show and lending your perspective on the Secrets of Fail series. You built an amazing business, and wishing you and the rest of the team there all the very best for the future.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's been fun.